Jay, thanks for holding today on this Thursday edition. You're on the air worldwide.
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
Good, brother. Thanks for calling.
Excellent. So, yeah, I had a couple points that the previous caller that called in talked about Ron Paul during the conversation, and I actually thought it was kind of funny. He called you a neocon a couple times for touting the Republican line. You kind of changed before from going to anti-war. You know, the globalists are starting to try to topple regimes, and then the whole PNAC document and all that stuff. And it seems like you kind of changed your tune since then, since Trump.
Because we've got a new president in, and we're fighting the globalists, and the globalists helped North Korea. They gave them weapons. They've been using it to take control of the region as a set piece and to let China be dominant, and Trump's standing up against that. And so Korea... Kim Jong-un is shooting missiles over Japan, threatening to nuke the U.S. So I'm saying we have to have a strong response. We're in a different world, another time frame. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, for him to actually launch those missiles, part of the agreement is that he notifies the U.S. in advance. So we actually know, our government knows in advance of those launches. So when we see in the news and when you propagate this thing where it's like he's just doing this out of nowhere, like he actually has to file for those to be made aware in Japan, United States, like our government actually.
I know, and now he's signaled that he's going to do an above-ground hydrogen bomb test. You like that? Okay, we got Roger Stone here with us, and I'll be gone in about 10, 15 minutes, but I promise to take a lot of calls. We're co-hosting together. He's got a lot of big breaking news on multiple fronts. Laura Loomer has confronted Huma Abedin again. That brings up the subject. The New York Times has written articles where they say they admire Anthony Weiner. I mean, this is bizarre garbage. But Jay in Massachusetts, I want to fill Roger Stone in here. I like Ron Paul. I appreciate Ron Paul. Ron Paul has said on air that half the contributions he got in one of his presidential runs were from InfoWars supporters, and that close to half in the next run. So let's be clear. I'm not bragging. I'm telling my audience, you were the biggest group that supported Ron Paul, who helped build the modern liberty movement. And I supported Senator Rand Paul to run for the Senate and was his biggest supporter. And he said on air that early on, most of his support was from us in Kentucky. He only comes on when he calls and wants on because his staff thinks it's Alex Jones. And oh my gosh, he has to call. When he comes on, he calls us. I don't even care. It's a U.S. senator. I like him for his policies. Our listeners would rather us play some YouTube video of an average person. You understand, like, Rand Paul's lucky to come on this show. They all are. And I'm not knocking them, but folks are sick of senators. They're sick of congressmen. They're sick of presidents. What they want is results. Now, that said, Ron Paul's on here. He's a good guy. And he's like, Alex, you sound like a neocon. You sound like a warmonger saying North Korea is a threat. And, oh, stop saying they got a bomb and stop saying they're threatening. That's neocon propaganda. And I'm like, listen, I'm just putting out the other side because this is North Korea. This is a really bad guy. This is a serious oppressor. I was against the Iraq war. I was against the Syria war. I've been against the Libya war. I've been against it all. Having the CIA experts on, exposing it all. Literally getting the attack because I'm doing it. Trying to stop the Arab Spring. But then to just say, you're a neocon. Because I'm like, listen, I get we've got neocons, we got warmongers and blah, blah, but North Korea, I don't want war, but they've got a role to play. They're doing some bad stuff. And there's this thought thing politically where, no, they're not. And then callers call in and say, I don't want to ever hear Ron Paul on again. Or Jay calls in and starts going, Alex, you are changing your views on things. No, I'm not. Why is everything so polarized? I support this country, and I support our military. And Trump is defeating ISIS and not going in like his generals want and kicking out Damascus and getting rid of Assad. And Assad's promising to have elections. That's what Trump said he'd do. It's what he's doing. He's doing what he said on the tax cuts. But North Korea and China, man, they attacked in 1949. Mao Zedong did. They came in with Kim Jong-il's father and Kim Jong-un's grandfather, Kim Il-sung. People don't even know these names. I do. I study it. Read books on it. I've had family that was there. North Korea is a horrible, horrible demon cult. I get our sanctions hurt them worse. I don't know what to do. But people keep acting like the North's not going to do something. The more you appease them, the more out of control they get. So this idea that I'm suddenly this big warmonger, former Marine Corps officer, I'm going to our guest right now, former Marine Corps officer, you know, who's been against all these wars, Joel Skousen says, no, this is different, this is real. And that's because he's really looked at the evidence. It doesn't mean we want a war. It doesn't mean we don't know we have neocons and warmongers. I don't want a war. It could trigger Russia and China and have a thermonuclear war. I want peace. But I can say North Korea is doing bad stuff. That's not war propaganda. That's the truth. So I don't get people that can't hold two ideas in their mind at the same time and get, we've got our problems, but man, North Korea's, its leadership's really sucks. Do you get where I'm going with this, Roger Stone?
Yes, indeed. I most certainly am. Look, I understand that President Trump is forced to deal with the hangover, the loose ends from 40 years of adventurous neocon policies, which unfortunately have created a large number of people in the world who hate our guts. And unfortunately, that has to be dealt with. It's a dangerous world. Now, I voted for Ron Paul. I cast my last ballot as a Republican before I switched to the Libertarian Party, largely because I'd given up on the Republicans after the capture of the party by Mitt Romney. Now that Donald Trump staged the hostile takeover of the Republican Party, I'm back to the party of my ancestors and the party I'm most sentimentally comfortable in. But there's no question that you have to be realistic about the North Korean threat. I'm not for thermonuclear war over North Korea. It's hard for me to believe that we couldn't drop some special ops guys in there and take this guy out. He's insane. And his own people know he's insane. But they're also afraid that they might get shot in the head if they look at him the wrong way.
Yeah, he's already killed a bunch of his family. I mean, he's a bad guy. We're not saying we want to have a war, but I can say he's a bad guy.
Well, it's like those who say, we shouldn't be at war with ISIS. There's a difference between boots on the ground and deep incursions and using all of this very expensive technology that we've paid for with our tax dollars and a drone program. I do think that you have to recognize that George Bush and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama left us an existential ISIS threat. It has to be dealt with in the most limited but effective way possible. Trump has vowed to crush ISIS, and I believe he will.
And I support him getting rid of the project of the globalists and the EU and the rest of it, the whole Arab Spring. Thank God he's stopping that whole program that meant to collapse the Middle East and roll them into Europe and the rest of the world for an Islamic invasion that they could then use to take our liberties. I think he's doing a great job. Jay, there's your response. I agree with what Roger Stone just said.
And that actually brings up a good point, because he said, you basically said send in special forces, which is basically what happened since the 60s, since JFK, which, if you're saying that you're not a neocon and you're not touting that agenda, you basically just agreed with assassination of a leader. So a second point that I want to bring up is the relation from the occult.
Well, that was Roger saying that, but I want to say this. I don't like regime change, and I say don't even go to Venezuela. That's their problem. But I'm not going to cry if Kim Jong-un, that little demonic twerp, ends up breaking his neck.
Well, and the alternative, of course, is some military action, some aerial action in which millions could die, theoretically.
Well, let me just say this. Nobody that wants to just say we're neocons, because it's fun to say, and then the mighty have fallen, and all the rest of it. Explain to me what we're supposed to do about North Korea, because he's firing missiles over Japan. He's saying imminent attacks on the mainland. He's going to test hydrogen bombs. He's threatening to blow up South Korea. I mean, he's got a gun pointed at us saying he's going to use it. And, of course, you're going to say, well, that's not what he's really saying. No, I've gone and read what they're actually saying.
So I think what needs to actually happen is people need to be aware of and made aware of what the occult agenda actually is. And so I've actually been to Bohemian Groves. When as you come into Monte Rio and you pass by Camp Meeker, and there's the little weird-looking trucks and all those junkyard-looking things as you come into the Bohemian entrance. I've actually been in there, so I know what the surrounding area looks like. And for you to actually even get into that campground, that kind of smells a little fishy. So are you a traveling man?
traveling man. I don't know what that code word means.
Oh, you know what the code word, though, right?
Well, it sounds like a code word. Am I a fellow traveler? Like a communist? No.
No, like a Freemason. You always talk about the grand architect and the creator and all that stuff. Which is
well, the Bible calls God the grand architect. You have to understand that the occult groups and all that have taken over all these different symbols and names. And no, the answer is I'm not a Mason. So you're now saying I didn't really sneak in Bohemian Grove on my own?
No, well, I'm saying it's almost impossible to actually get through all of the razor wire that surrounds that.
Did I put my pants on this morning?
So I don't think.
No, hold on. Let me ask you another question since you're saying all this. When were you to Bohemian Grove?
When was I to Bohemian Grove?
Yeah.
I was there a few years ago.
Okay. So you understand, no. You understand space-time continuum. If I snuck in there 16 years ago and then they massively increased security, is it possible the topography surrounding the 1,700-acre compound in between two mountain ridges bordering the Russian River, is it possible they put up further security barriers since I snuck in?
See, what you're saying is
whoa. You just said 2 years ago that you saw barbed wire there. You're saying it's nearly impossible for me to get in there. There's video of how I got in there. I snuck into the parking lot, got onto one of their trucks, had code words I was given by a lawyer who had a friend of his that worked there. They had daily codes. I was given the daily code by insiders, and I was able to get in, and I explained it all. It's on video.
But you used the code word to get in. That's what I'm saying. Like
no. You said, I don't know the code word you said. I knew that they had daily code words for the workers. I explained in the film, we had a worker inside that helped get us in. John Ronson later explains all that in a book he wrote about it. So I'm explaining to you again. You don't think I couldn't sneak in there again?
I think you're probably invited. You have to be invited. So, I mean, are you on the guest?
Okay, God bless you. Listen, I got to get to the other calls and finish up, let Roger Stone take over, but I promise to go to these calls. Here's the deal. No one can believe I was ever successful on my own. No one can believe that I ever did anything on my own. I've had family, people then say I work for agencies that worked at government agencies. I'm basically ashamed of that. Not that they were bad people, but that any connection to that. I did this myself with the listeners. Just like, the Tatum guy that shot the video that has, now it's like 70 million views on all the videos this week. He did that himself. People like that. He said those words. He did that. So it's like Hillary saying the Russians won the election or the Russians run me. No, they don't. Okay, I run InfoWars and my crew does. The reason we're successful is I'm not running people. I hire folks that want freedom. Listen, Roger's here to host the show, and I said I'd go to these calls. But, Roger, what do you make of this type of crap?
Well, Alex, I can just see it now. You cheek by jowl with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds right there at the table at the Bilderberger conference.
That's why they're locking us out of the White House, banning InfoWars from the president, pulling our press passes when the president gets them for us. That's why they're moving heaven and earth to stop us, because we're establishment.
Man, it's an absurdity, Alex. You knew you were taking your life in your hands when you snuck in there. You knew what the security was like, but, you're a resourceful fellow. But the idea that you were invited or somehow part of their establishment power games, that's pretty laughable.
Well, the guy actually followed it. That was 16 years ago, July 15th, when they did the Commission of Care. They have daily, or it's like every 2 days back then they had code words. They had passes, everything. I couldn't get a pass. The guy said, look, it's too hard going through the gate. They might ask you other stuff. Just get on these trucks in a larger area, which they now have barbed wired off. They had some barbed wire, but it was like classic Texas barbed wire. Now it is razor wire. So we had reporters there just 2 years ago. But then 5 years ago, the History Channel wanted to try to get me to sneak in. And we went there and I said, see all the barbed wire? See how they shut this down? You can't do it. They make you get on trucks with double IDs in town. I said, we've got to try the Russian River entrance. And when I pulled up there, I saw the cops waiting for us, and I ran. I escaped. They all got arrested. It's on tape. I'm sorry, Roger, go ahead.
No, Alex, it's really extraordinary because, in all honesty, talking about the Bilderbergers, when we have the effort to take down our president about to go down, and that the people we're talking about are those who are orchestrating the coming attempt on to remove President Trump.
What the aging process is when the cell replicates, we lose a little bit of our telomeres. Telomeres are the little cups on the end of our chromosomes.
And when it runs out, you start dying.
Secure your DNA force today at InfoWarsLife.com.